Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Carbon. With me, of course, is Mr. Matt Germain. And we have a very special guest today, Mr. Craig Calcaterra. Hey, how's it going, Craig?
It's going great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Man, it is a pleasure. I mean, I know we had you a while back and we were talking about your book at the time, Rethinking Fandom, how to beat the sports industrial complex at its own game. Oh gosh, man, I wish you were there. It was a fun conversation. And see, one of the things, well, you've got another book out now, Stars of Major League Baseball, don't you?
Yeah, those are like kids' books. There were like two that came out. I mean, they really are. They're the sort of books that when you were a kid and you'd go to like the Scholastic Book Fair and
Yeah.
get. That's precisely what it was aimed for. They had the publisher that I worked with has a series for various sports, and I did Stars of Major League Baseball, which was like the top 24, 28, I can't even remember now, players of the day as of, end of 2023, I guess. And then Legends of Major League Baseball was like the best of all time. And, just a big page with a picture, a little sort of bio aimed at like the precocious 8-year-olds, but more like 10 to 12-year-olds who want to learn a little bit about baseball. And that sold way better than my big adult book about how to rethink your fandom and everything. So hey, who am I to judge?
Oh no, I'm glad to hear it's continued to do well. And of course, Matt knows I just had our first grandchild, so I'll probably buy one.
Congratulations!
Thank you. Buy it, set it on the shelf, so as she grows, I can sit down and educate her on the legends, man. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Don't read the Stars ones because like even a year later, it's already so bad. I have like Sandy Alcantara in there. It's like it was really good when I wrote it, but like guys get hurt.
Oh gosh, isn't that the case? Hey, one other thing we talked about, I'm thinking was we were talking about CBA, and there was a lockout
Yeah.
at the time.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and I was saying, man, isn't it so great? I see this one employee of the Angels. He's stepping away from the team because he wants to be able to help a player that he's really likes and he works with. And who's that player? Oh, Ohtani, and it's his translator. Yeah. So, well,
Yeah, a lot of things change. God, that feels like it was 100 years ago, but it was
it
just like last
does.
year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it goes to show you, the man was actually just an opportunist. He wouldn't let a gravy train go away from him with all that
What
going on.
blows my mind about that is if he was even just like 75% careless as opposed to like 95% careless the way he was, he could have got away with that for years.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I'm advising that.
No, no. But I forgot you can give us some legal advice, can't you?
In some states, yeah, sure. No, I'm
Okay.
still licensed actually. I have been a baseball writer longer than I was a lawyer at this point. So I've probably forgotten most of the things other than just, don't talk to the cops. Other than that, that's all I can tell you.
That's
Don't
always
give
a
them,
good starter. What, Matt?
don't give them any ammunition. They've got
No.
enough already. Yeah.
Exactly. They wouldn't be asking you questions if they had you dead to rights.
Oh gosh, man, oh man. But like I said, I wanted to talk about some things like the Rays Stadium and the owner. Keep hearing rumors about ownership, Sasaki, even the MASN. What's going on with them between the Nationals and Baltimore? But what I've seen on TV lately, just feel like I got to talk about this. I mean, once I hear the chief of chiefs says we need to go ahead and give a pardon to Pete Rose, it seems like, yeah.
The
Yeah.
only people that really liked that were people like me who create content on the internet because there is nothing that is more designed to get people like remembering arguments from 17 years ago and getting nowhere than a Pete Rose item. So I hate it. I don't like the realities of it, but that's really good for a slow baseball news day.
Well, you've had plenty to work with on those slow days in the last couple of weeks, man. I tell you what, Matt and I were kind of going over a few ideas. And Matt, you want to hit that first one? You wanted to ask about the diversity and the DIE and baseball and the stadiums and such.
Yeah, well, it's funny you talk about the Pete Rose thing because to me it's also detracting from the fact that they're doing a lot of work to kind of attack the DEI things that have been put in place across the country. So from a baseball point of view, when you look back at the history of it, I know you know it very well, in terms of the impact that Jackie Robinson and that relationship had with baseball, and I don't want to say it healed a lot of wrongs, but it also helped America progress beyond a certain point that it may not have as easily without that kind of influence. So looking at the sport today, knowing that we don't know how far all of this nonsense is going to go, is there somebody that you know, like that, or that you can envision being that face or that kind of person that would, move things forward on that front?
At the moment, I will cop right now to being very, very cynical about all kinds of things, as I'm sure a lot of people. I mean,
Yeah.
I already skew grouchy, so it doesn't take much to push me to cynical. Right now, I'm actually trying not to think, okay, well, what's the way forward, or what figure will arise to help us through? Because I'm not trying to be defeatist. I'm not thinking like, oh, there are no solutions or anything, but my mental health and anybody's capacity to take in everything that's happening right now is limited. And right now I'm still feeling like I'm in the catch everything that's going on and trying to process it rather than think about good ideas. So it's hard for me to see that right now. I think if you look at history, it's more likely that it'll implode under its own weight. And then people will be looking around to try to figure out, okay, now who leads? So, I guess that's optimism. I have no idea. But you mentioned in context with the sport and with baseball, and this was a particularly cynical thing I wrote about a month ago. I'm really worried about Major League Baseball because in the last 10 or 15 years, it's been an institution that, depending on your point of view, either very savvily or very cynically does what power wants ultimately. Rob Manfred didn't move the All-Star game out of Atlanta that year because he had convictions about voting rights. He moved out of Atlanta because that's the way the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
That time it was from advertisers and people like that. But if something's blowing from Washington, I could also see him, and he has in the past, sort of bowed, and they will dutifully go to DC and eat whatever crap gets flung at them because they want to keep their antitrust exemption. We all know this history. In the backdrop to all of that, with what's going on politically, I'm really wondering if we're going to see teams like cancel Pride Night or subtly change their promotions that they have this year. I sort of keep a count. There's 29 baseball teams that have a Pride Night. The only one that doesn't are the Texas Rangers for various reasons. I don't know. I wonder if anybody's going to cancel them. I wonder if they're going to downplay April 15th and Jackie Robinson Day maybe a little bit. I wonder what the publicity angle will be around the game like they played last year. I think they're doing it again down at the Negro League Stadium in Alabama. I could look when companies like Target and anybody else all of a sudden start adhering to this stuff just because they don't want to catch hell from Donald Trump's Twitch account or whatever he posts from. I don't know that Major League Baseball will be the bravest, and I hope I'm wrong about that though.
So I asked that because to me, okay, you're Donald Trump is pushing for Pete Rose to get, back into the good books in terms of Major League Baseball. What if he pushes to unretire Jackie Robinson's number, for example?
Oh wow, that would be
Oh,
Lord. Even I am not so cynical to think that they would do that, but wow, that would be insane.
He wants to show his power, right? He wants to show that he holds all of the power. So to me, that would be the most power move that you could ever think of, right?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if even he would be that way. But but we'll see a million other little aggressions. Like baseball's been in the off season right now, and we know how this stuff works. When things are in the headlines, when the NFL's playing, then political figures will, reach out to the NFL to find the next little political war. They'll do it with baseball season too. The first time there's a fight between players of two races on the field,
Oh Lord,
there's going to be horrible political crap thrown in there.
The first, the Toronto angle,
Oh yeah,
how long before they become the Buffalo Jays, or
oh geez, no. Yeah, I think I saw today like Atlanta is going to visit Toronto like in mid-April, like it's pretty early in the season, and let's be honest. If there's a fandom that's maybe going to not take kindly to Canadian stuff because of the political winds, is going to be Atlanta fans. Like, hey, look, and I was an Atlanta fan for like 30 years, please. It just, there's going to be a million little opportunities for this kind of stuff, and sometimes it's going to be just dumb, sometimes it's going to be like unintentionally funny, and sometimes it's going to be toxic.
Exactly. But I think there's one thing I want to point out, like, because in the last 24 hours to 36 hours, I think there's been a momentum shift towards like the whole tariff nonsense going on between Canada and the United States. Canada really stood their ground and had a cohesive, agenda, which helped. So is that an indication of how entities that would want to keep promoting, have the Pride Nights, have all the things that they want to have, they need to kind of get together and be cohesive in that stance and kind of go with like-minded states, like-minded teams, yada yada yada, and present themselves as a group instead of individuals.
Oh, 100%. And it's just in every aspect of life and history, the people that try to stand in the middle or not be noticed, or go path of least resistance, are the ones that get bowled over, and the people who have their dignity and stand up and have solidarity win. That's just how it works. Or if they don't win for whatever reason, they win with dignity.
Mhm.
And I just think of this analogy. Like, I used to go whitewater rafting when I was a kid, and like in high school and stuff. I lived in West Virginia. We had whitewater rafting, and the hardest thing to learn is when you go into like a class 4 or a class 5 wave, you want to lean into the wave and over the side of the boat, because you pushing down with your oar will push you back. It seems counterintuitive. Everything about you wants to cower in the middle of the boat, and it's the worst thing you could do because you get bounced out. Anything and anyone who is going to take a stand needs to do it boldly and needs to do it in solidarity.
I agree. Yep, completely agree.
And I'm on Team Canada, by the way, as far as all this goes. Look,
most people that understand what is actually going on. But Craig, this is the other part, the follow on I wanted to ask you, because as a Canadian and as somebody who serves in the military as an officer in Canada, like one of the things that we have as a general rule is we're not allowed to talk politics amongst ourselves. In the wardroom, you walk in, there's no talking about politics, right? But I do it now, like online, because I feel it needs to be done, and I'm more pointed than I ever have been. But my family growing up was very loud, very boisterous. All questions were open, even though we had everything from the hippie-ish kind of model to the hardline right-wing Michael J. Fox and Family Ties kind of Republican leaning person at the table. We shared ideas, and it was like educating ourselves about how things work, what's real, what isn't real. And so with that information sharing, it tempered all of the anger down. And so
yeah.
what I'm finding right now with the United States, when I look at it from outside, there's a lot of people that refuse to talk politics, and they think it's such a personal thing that it's taboo. That is the worst thing that you could ever have. All it does is lower the political IQ of the entire populace, who then have no idea what they're actually voting about and voting for, angry about, nice about. They just don't know where things actually stand. And then you mix in a media that's been attacked in terms of truth and dishonesty and angles, and then that just compounds the problem, because you're not talking about it at home, you're watching the news, you're getting bombarded with ads, with this, that, the other thing, so then you're completely lost. So that's the way I see the United States. You talked about the whitewater rafting. I see you guys in that wave right now, and you're trying to fight your way out of it, but it's a heck of a battle.
But the problem, and you nailed it, it's what I call the information ecosystem.
Mhm.
And whether that is from political socialization when you're a kid talking with your family or your friends or whatever, or the information you see through the media, the United States information ecosystem over the last 20 to 25 years has just been hit with a toxic bomb. It's, I hate to use a cliched analogy, it's a perfect storm of we had a law here called the Fairness Doctrine back in the 80s that used to require balanced political stuff, and Reagan repealed it, so that doesn't exist. That leads to the rise of Fox News, so that's like a huge thing. Um, and then of course how social media works. Don't want to sound like an old complaining man, but I've been on social media. I know that it is poison. I just happen to have low level immunity, I think. So you put all that together against our sort of baseline tribalism in this country, which I think we're unique in countries that have actually been around for a long time, and just sort of how balkanized our cultures and subcultures are. And of course, our racial history and everything else. You throw that all together and then turn us dumb, and what's going to happen? And that's kind of what's happened.
Well, we become so insular. I mean, the whole thing about the social media. Matt and I've talked before. Talk about what on Google, they're going to show you what they think you're already thinking anyway. They're your mindset. So you're not going to have some expanse above and beyond what you're already.
It's really
about.
funny. I just had this conversation. My dad is like 81 years old, and I was sitting and talking, and he's fairly tech savvy, but whatever. We're having this conversation. But he doesn't watch TV or things like that at night. He watches YouTube videos, and he's 82, so he likes to watch YouTube videos about naval ships and about how they built a dam and things like that. And he'll sit and watch them, and he'll click through them until he gets sleepy, and then he goes to sleep. And he asked me the other day. He said, "I can't find anything new anymore because every time I click, I just keep getting more of the same sort of thing." Like, he's tech savvy, but not enough to know how algorithms and how the whole things have changed to feed you and reinforce what it thinks you like or what it thinks you know. And if it does know for sure what you know, it will reinforce it in a major, major way. And that's how like political stuff has happened here. We've gotten in these little vacuums where we're seeing more and more reflected back of what we already believe, but just amped up a little bit.
Yep.
And there's nothing like a negative feedback loop like that to create some really extreme positions. It's like the source of our political polarization. And I don't know how you get out of it. I'm 51 years old. I'm guessing we don't get out of it in my lifetime.
So I think Blue Sky is an example of how you get out of it, but it's a tiny little speck. I'm not saying it's the solution, but when sports writers kind of got attacked by all these major outlets and newspapers, whatever, and The Athletic was created, right? That's another example of a group of people getting together and creating that. I think the same needs to happen on the news side of things and be funded at arm's length with trust, if at all possible. So
like a nonprofit model for sure. Right.
So if you're a Democratic billionaire, right, Mark Cuban, whoever else, yada yada, and you happen to think, I want to invest in something like this because it's worthwhile and it'll be long lasting. What I would do is I would get together with all the other Democratic billionaires who want to spread the truth. I would create this trust that funds this company, and you put the right people in charge at the beginning, then you let it run. But a trust that self-feeds at a certain level and is then hands off, and you just let it go, right?
That would be ideal, right? That's like the total platonic ideal of, you want news people and information people to not be subservient to business needs, and you want the people who can fund that sort of thing. Here's the weak part. You need to find those people who are truly altruistic. Yeah. Even the ones who we believe have good hearts or who tend to be right more than they're wrong. I'm not trying to go all class warrior here, but I really do think that once you get to a certain level of wealth, and once you get to a place where there aren't a lot of people around you who tell you no very often, it's very hard to let go of the impulse to make more money or to have more control over something. So yeah, I love that idea. I'd like to think it could happen. I don't know if it could. In small ways, I think it can. A small outlet here. You see it locally, actually. There's some small local news outlets that they're run on a shoestring. There's one here where I live in Columbus, Ohio, that called Matter News, which it's literally a 2-person operation. It's funded, but it's not profit seeking. It actually does really good news and investigations. On a small level, it works. I'd like to think it could scale.
I would just love to see it to the point, because I think people would gravitate to it. Like, even people who watch Fox News, sometimes they just think that's the only place where they can get good news, right? I think if you build it big enough and large enough and with the right marketing scheme, you can probably get it to compete with at least on level, right? Which at that point, when you talk about educating people and having them be aware of what's actually going on, presenting facts in a logical way without being antagonistic or skewed in your views. I mean, just presenting that, I think, would cure a lot of the issues. Because my fear with watching what's going on is the more and more and more Donald Trump aligns himself with how Russia runs things, the less and less and less control there will be. I would not be surprised if at some point there's an attack on Blue Sky and it gets shut down, for instance. Like,
Oh yeah, I'm waiting for that one.
so, so what, to what level do we let it go before we put that other kind of system in place? And I say we, there's somebody.
Yeah.
What are you
I
What are
mean,
you doing up there, North? Anyway, no, it's
Funny, Mark.
if I was an insane billionaire, I would fund that in a second. I'll say that much.
I mean, the challenge is, I mean, I drop decks and all that, and I'm on Blue Sky, and I know it's much more limited, but I also know that now I'm still putting myself in another bubble, and I'm seeing what I already think come back to me all the time. And my mind goes to the idea of community events. Those can be dangerous, but a city hall of open forum, and then you hear was it the Speaker of the House the other day told the other GOP folks you don't need to have town halls. You don't need to have town halls. And it's like, good Lord, man, it's the one place where we can face to face talk these things out. Now, do people get irrational and angry at those things? Yeah, but it's at least a place where we can start to try to have a forum, have a conversation, and it's not happening. It's being pushed away.
I could go. I mean, I don't think you guys have 4 hours, but I could definitely. I've got this. If someone said right now you have 4 hours, you got to fill, and it wasn't about like sports or movies, it would be about this idea that we just don't have community anymore. And I don't mean it like in a nostalgic sense. It is the way our lives are set up are almost anti-communal. And we don't, even weirdo middle class people like me, if I want to treat myself, can buy my way out of a lot of inconveniences that the world has to deal with. I can get this class, or I can buy, advanced entry or whatever. And we don't have a lot of places where people come together. Like there used to be a day when, look, everyone had to go to the bank, everyone had to go to the post office, everyone had to wait in line for a train.
Yep.
People would mix of various different backgrounds and socioeconomic classes and things. And we just don't have that level of human interaction. I'll stop now because I will go 4 hours.
Okay. Well,
There is a point I want to make though, because my daughters are, they're on Roblox, they're on this, they're on that, the other thing. There's different types of community, whether it's gaming, whether it's like there is,
it's different, right? Yeah, you're right. It exists. I
Right.
have a million friends. They all live on my computer.
What I
And
would say is that a lot of times what comes out to bind them can be surprising. So, and a good example is in Canada, right? The separatist movement in Quebec has almost been quelled forever because of what Donald Trump is doing to Canada. The
I
amount
saw
of
the polls. I saw the polls went from like liberals 20 down to like break even in this
yeah,
course of a couple of weeks, and it's all because of Trump being a jerk.
because they and intuitively they know that the conservatives in Canada are very friendly with the Trump movement, right? So they're
Right? Yeah.
afraid that they'll be sold out if they vote the conservatives in. So when you talk about community and it binding together, and then all the booing and all the waving Canadian flags, buying Canadian flags, yeah, that's an example of how they got motivated. So my point would be like for the United States, it's almost like they need an external threat
yeah.
to get that kind of cohesive mindset once again and stop looking at
The
certain
problem, though, is when you're the global military hegemon, like the United States has been, you can go find external threats and make them up all the time without it being a concern. And so we've done that in the past too. So it's dangerous.
I mean, it
Um,
looks like we're seeing the beginning of that right now, Craig, and it's scaring the living daylights out of me. So I'll tell you that
I don't. This is I'm a big idiot because I look at maps that are flat all the time and I forget about how globes work. But you know what? Russia's here, the United States is here, and Canada's right here. And I don't think a lot of Americans appreciate, like, even I make jokes. Like, I've gone on Blue Sky just this evening and I was making jokes about, when the Canadians put us all in re-education camps, can I have a nice one? Things like that. But it's not funny. Like, it's not a joke. This is like a country literally threatening another country's sovereignty. And like anything else the Republicans in this country do, they do it in a way that is deadly serious, but that they'll say afterwards, well, we're just joking. You're not getting the joke. But then they carry through with what they were doing, and it was never a joke. And that doesn't mean that I think Donald Trump is going to send, the United States Army over the border, but it does mean that this is serious. They're not treating it like it's serious, but they are being just horrible and threatening.
My military mind wants to take over right now, but I'm not gonna go too deep into it. What I will say is if Donald Trump is actually aligning the United States with Russia, there is no nation on earth or combination of nation on earth that can do anything to stop them. That's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It just we'd be in a completely different world in so many ways. Like, we still have a residual nuclear deterrent in the world right now. It's not well managed, but we have one. In that, the two most stocked up countries as far as nuclear weapons go do have the ability to annihilate the other one. Once you change that and that aligns, that changes the world in a lot of ways. But it might not change it in expected ways either. And so we'd be so far off of what the three of us in our lifetimes have considered a world order that I don't even want to speculate how bad it could be. But yeah.
No, I'm with you. Hey, there's a couple things I want to thank you for, Craig. And pardon me.
God.
Well, one I was probably going to put at the end of the show, but I want to say it now is usually I think at the end of each one of the Cup of Coffee newsletters, you've got some music for me, babe. You got something good for me. And I can feel a little better, a little boss.
I started doing that like 5 years ago during the pandemic. I wrote on my own like personal blog, not baseball stuff. I wrote something called the Pandemic Diary, where I kept an actual diary from like the beginning of February of 2020, and I stopped around May or whatever about what was going on every day, just because I figured I might want to know someday. And people started reading it for whatever reason, and then I put songs on the bottom. I just embedded a YouTube with a song because it was a very moody, sort of atmospheric sort of writing. I was sort of crawling into my head a lot and things, and so I would put things that reflected my mood, and people started liking it for whatever reason. So when I started the newsletter later that year, I just started throwing the songs at the end too, to sort of play out music, because I don't know, if it was really heavy all day in the content that I wrote, I like to put something lighter at the end, or if I'm feeling in a crappy mood, sometimes I signal it through this sort of music I share. It's just a thing that I like to do, and readers have responded well to. So thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. Bob Marley one day, The Boss another day, and something obscure another. I love it, brother. So thank you for that.
We got the Clash tomorrow morning as we're recording this on Wednesday. Thursday morning's cup of coffee ends with the Clash. Know your rights.
Like it.
I'm loving it. Oh, you talking about cup of coffee? Looking at it again today, I thought you gave some good advice. We were talking about earlier, Matt. You were saying what are some of the things people are going to say, and Craig, in your newsletter today, you pointed out, hey, here's a good response when people ask about Canada. Can you tell us a little bit about what you wrote today?
Yeah, and I won't take credit for the quoted response in there, but the idea we saw already with the Four Nations and everything else, there's going to be booing during national anthems because that's just how it works, and people are going to try to stir up stuff with that. Media people are going to try to stir it up. Fans will try to stir it up. And someone's going to go to either a United States player who plays for the Blue Jays or a visiting team in Toronto, and the United States national anthem will get booed. And they're going to ask him how you feel about that, probably to try to generate some sort of response or some controversy or whatever, because they're ball players, they're young kids, and they don't know anything, and so somebody's going to say that sucks, they should respect us, and it's create an international incident. And the advice that I saw, it was I only know his Blue Sky handle, and where he writes here under the Tao of Steed. He's a
Yeah.
Blue. You might know who that is. I'm assuming. Oh, you Canadians know each other, right?
No, but
You're a
he and
Rays
I were
fan.
blogging about the Blue Jays about the same time, like before I followed the Rays.
Okay. It's a small community, so I
Yeah.
sort of figured that would be okay, but it totally came off as like anti-Canadian. That's awesome. Good
Oh,
job, Craig.
good.
Anyway, there's a way to answer that question that doesn't offend the fans, and I can't remember what it was, but he wrote it out from the point of view of a player, saying something like, "Oh yeah, hey, I'm proud of my country, and of course I don't like to hear my national anthem get booed, but hey, I understand what's going on in the world. I understand that people here are passionate and blah blah blah." And then you just talk out of it like any athlete would talk out of it. I really hope everybody takes that to heart. I will say, when I was back covering spring trainings, when I worked for NBC Sports, I would go to spring training every year. And on the first day of spring training, there's like a half hour where you can't go in the clubhouse, and it's media training. And they do that over and over through spring training with all the guys, including the minor leaguers, training them how to answer the kinds of questions that used to get guys in trouble. You don't see that very often anymore. That's why everybody's so boring and bland when they give their, I just saw a pitch I could hit and whatever. No one ever says, yeah, his stuff wasn't good today and I beat the crap out of it, because they have media training. And so I like to think that big part of that media training is going to be anyone who's going to be playing games in Toronto this year.
I'd like to see Tommy Pham get that media training and be in the room in the back just listening.
He's immune. He's one of the few that you could tell went to every media training like this, crossing my arms. Yeah, but I love him. I mean, he's totally shot himself in the foot a million times, but I love guys like that because it's funny to me.
They're just genuine.
Tommy's honest. Whatever else he's honest about, you don't have to worry about how he feels about things.
Right.
The other thing, I've been with Matt now. Sometimes I'll do a little comedy bit for the first minute or so before the show. A mockery of the president and some other things, and Musk. But I'm looking at that. I'm looking at Kimmel. Not that I'm Kimmel. Look at him, and I see all these pieces, and I start thinking about feeding the beast. Is what we're doing? Are we actually taking a very serious and dangerous situation? But through satire, which gives us a voice, but at the same time, are we diminishing what's actually there? Are we not giving enough, what am I say, real attention to what's going on? I
worry about that sometimes. But I also, on some level, the way I have always viewed humor is like self-defense.
Yeah.
And, partially as a defense mechanism. And also sometimes there are things, the internet has sort of convinced us all, and social media has convinced us all, that we need to be sort of authorities on everything, that we need to have an opinion about everything, that we need to have an idea about everything. We don't, though. Some things are big, and we're all just idiot individuals. And there are all kinds of things that happen all the time that I feel I should weigh in on because I'm on social media. But God, I don't know. And all I know is that makes me feel scared, or that makes me feel happy, or whatever. And so a lot of the humor I see out there about these very serious situations and what's going on in this world, I just presume, unless I have a reason to think otherwise, that it is meant as sort of a laugh in the face of horrors kind of thing. Because that's what I'm doing. I still try to drop jokes about this stuff, but, it's driving me crazy. And, the humor's got to be there. I think just figure out the line between humor and then sort of mocking other people being worried. That's the one thing I don't care for.
It does point though to the sensitivity being different now, I find, because you're looking at probably the quickest evolution ever of industry and things that will attack us already before we even look at the political side. When you're talking AI, robotics, manual labor basically disappearing and being taken over within the next 10, 15 years, the thinking trades also being under attack, whether you're an author, a painter, a writer. I get offers every day, about 5 of them on LinkedIn, asking me to teach AI how to write.
Oh God, yeah, I've gotten this too.
Like, come on, like at some point there's going to have to be, so the way that I see the attacks that are going on right now is, you're talking about a government that is never going to be empathetic enough to provide basic income as one example, right? Canada has already spoken about it and said, yeah, it's a reality. We're going to have to do it. We just don't know exactly when and how and at what scope and whatever it's going to happen. So if you know that and you're not willing to go there and it's living up north of you, and things that happen in Canada usually leach down to the States eventually, whether we're talking about legalization of marijuana, whether we're talking about a whole bunch of other issues,
Tim Hortons.
yeah,
Hey,
importance. There you go.
yeah.
Hockey's made it all the way to Tampa and Miami. I mean, we spread like fire. So my point would be, if you know that is coming and that's pressuring your government and your uh, your views on how people are going to work in the future to be not the way you want them to be. As a government, you're going to react and you're going to try to attack it before it ever comes to fruition, right?
Yeah. The United States has always been really good at that. And again, I don't want to sound like some sort of like college dorm Marxist or whatever, but you
Yeah.
know, the the fact is, capital wins in this country. Um, the parties have flipped back and forth several times for various reasons in the last 200 years. There are two major parties, but they're always reinforcing power, and capital and money and industry. That's the number one thing, and anything that is perceived as interfering with that in this country, more so than most, I think. There's an active attack to snuff it out as soon as they can.
Sorry, guys.
And
Must have lost him there for a second. Okay. One of the things that Matt was going to ask, I think, before he left, and that is, rising costs of pork and beef. How's that going to impact concession costs? And how does it work out for federal employees being able to even afford to attend a game in the future?
oh yeah, forget it. I mean, everything's going to be more expensive. I'm sure we have a bunch of bats made with Canadian maple wood at this point. We don't use the ash anymore. There's going to be it's going to touch every aspect of life, and I think the most notable thing, other than the national anthem stuff we talked about, that you'll see at baseball games, when the Jays go to Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit, where they draw, because like a lot of Jays fans will come to I go to Tigers games a lot. There's tons of Jays fans there when Toronto's in town. You're going to see a lot less of that fan traveling, either because they don't want to or because it's just inconvenient to do so.
Well, we'll give Matt another moment here, but here's just another thing I'll just throw out as a random note. I was looking at what's it? There's a show called Unfrosted. Have you heard about this?
I've heard the name. I don't know anything about it though.
Unfrosted. It's on Netflix, and it's a show with all these stand-up comedians, and it's about Post and Kellogg and the creation of the Pop-Tart. Well, at the end, they show some of the different characters, who they really are and what they've happened. And one of them was Marjorie Post, and she was like this heiress. She was the woman who had Mar-a-Lago built. And,
yeah.
And her husband was E.F. Hutton. Everybody listens to him, right? So
I remember reading about that because back when Trump got in office the first time, I was like, "What's the deal with Mar-a-Lago?" Yeah, I remember reading about that.
Hey man,
and I just said that in a Jerry Seinfeld voice, and I think Jerry Seinfeld's in Unfrosted. So there you
go. Yep. It's Unfrosted, right? Oh, Matt, we were just chatting a little bit before you're back now, buddy. We mentioned about the hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, brother. I don't know. I wonder about the tariffs, and I wonder about sports sponsorships. Now, I know Kubota is big with, if that's how you say it properly, doing a lot up north with you guys, I think, with the Blue Jays. And I'm wondering how some of that's going to translate with sponsorships across, I don't know, with different companies.
Well, I think the Tigers, until a couple years ago anyway, the Tigers were the only Major League Baseball team in the United States that, like Molson, I think, was like the big pour at Comerica Park.
Yep.
They might have changed that in the last year or two, but man, beer's going to get a little more expensive all of a sudden for some folks.
I think I need to send some bootleg bourbon up to Matt up there for my friends in Kentucky. But
oh yeah. I'm sorry,
Anyway.
we got you beat on that. The U.S. bourbon is better than the Canadian stuff. So if we're gonna fight a war, we'll fight over that.
All right. If you've ever tried Crown Royal, I think it does the trick. It's made in Gimli, Manitoba, and it's one of those
The
things where,
little purple velvet bags.
There you
yes,
go.
yes. Yeah, I used to have the triple Ryan gingers and when
Uh,
I was a much younger man. But the good thing I think with all this is that it creates opportunity, right? And if you're gonna, not be able to buy eggs right now, for instance, because it's 2025 and we haven't figured out eggs yet, right? So if you're not able to, you're gonna have to figure something else out. So my question was gonna be, so what are we gonna sell at the ballparks that is affordable once the hot dogs cost, $15 a piece?
Yeah.
well, I mean, wait, are you talking in Canada or are you talking here?
In the United States, our eggs are cheap. I think I got a dozen for $9, or sorry, a flat of 24 for 12 for $9 recently.
That's pretty.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's if you can find a 450 dozen of eggs down here, you're doing really really well.
Yeah.
Now I don't know. I remember though during the Gulf War they did the whole freedom fries thing here because that was like a typical stupid United States thing to do. Um, I could see some border war stuff with renaming stuff because there are ballparks here that do poutine now. That's
Yeah.
not just a Canadian thing. They'll call it I don't know freedom freedom mash. That's what we'll call it, freedom mash, freedom curds. Yeah.
Oh,
so
man.
the Americanos are now Canadianos up here, right?
Oh man, I
So
did see. Wait, I think I saw that. Did they do that somewhere?
yeah, they did. I don't know. I don't think it's widespread yet. Starbucks isn't on board with it, obviously, but
Well, I'm gonna be in England in May, and I always have to settle for Americanos over there because it's hard to find like drip coffee anywhere. And I'll
yeah,
see if we'll see which side England's on by then.
Oh,
yeah.
my.
And my wife was asking me, if ever there was a conflict between the United States and Canada that was military, would they come to your rescue? I said, we had to help them as Canadians across the ocean in
No, I
World War
mean,
II. I don't think we can do that again this time around.
well, look. Also, you guys never needed England's help to kick our ass because most of the losses we had in 1812 were to y'all. So whatever.
They don't know that Jim Carrey's a covert spy.
Well, I mean, it's like we talked about earlier. You guys are united, and we're completely spastic and schizophrenic. So there's an easy side to gravitate to at this point.
For sure.
I keep saying we should be the 11th province, that would solve everything.
I said that to someone like in real life. I was like just casually acting like that was a thing, and they looked at me, and then I had to remember, wait, I'm internet poisoned. They are not.
Oh, goodness. Oh, any other topics we should cover that we missed?
So, have you been able to enjoy any spring training? Like, I find myself.
I haven't watched any games yet, and I have a pretty low threshold for spring training games to begin with, just because they just feel like practice to me after all these years. But I haven't really watched any yet, this is probably the longest time I've gone and not just at least idly had it on because I have like a little MLB TV package where you can get most of the games. And I haven't watched any of them. Man, this weekend. I'll fix that.
Yeah, I watched watched the first couple of innings, whatever Scherzer when he first went out there, and said he's only going to be there for 2 innings. I'm not got to watch a whole game.
Yeah. And plus,
But
he was fighting. He was fighting with the robo during that first game he had
Lord.
too. So.
Well, see that if all this other stuff wasn't going to go on today, that was going to be a real topic with you. So maybe another time we'll address that.
I will give you the really short answer: is I live in a
Please.
AAA town. We have the Columbus Clippers here, so we've had the robo the challenge system for the last 2 or 3 years. It is great. I'm generally anti that stuff. It's great. It works quickly. It doesn't interrupt the flow of the game. You don't even notice it happening at
Right.
sometimes. So it'll be in MLB in 2026 is my guess, and no one will care after a month.
My take has always been this, and I've watched baseball very closely for a long time. I've always found that the human element, right, favored the veterans, the ones who had the track record, the
That's
umpires.
why Scherzer doesn't like it, by the way, is because he gets the benefit of the doubt. And that's why he was talking up the big storm the other day about thinking it's not good, because the robo doesn't know you're Max Scherzer.
That's right.
Exactly. It's exactly right. And so the young guys, to me, I always saw some guys come up, not get any credit. They have a bad start because of it, because they're getting angry, they're throwing strikes, and they're not getting the credit.
Umpires used to talk about,
right?
yeah, umpires used to talk about, well, he hasn't earned that pitch yet. They used to say that all the time. I'm like, oh my God.
Human element. Oh man, I hate.
Have you seen humans? We've been talking for an hour about how horrible humans are, and all of a sudden we're going to venerate the human element in baseball? God, no. Bring on the robots in everything.
Oh, gosh.
I agree. Yeah,
Oh, brother.
Some AI politicians. Oh man.
Oh. Well,
I'm glad I kept you guys on track so well.
We had fun, brother. I'll tell you. Oh, we were talking with Craig Calcaterra, and if you haven't looked at Cup of Coffee, you should. You can get it 5 times a week, and it's Craig's newsletter to the world. Those of us who enjoy baseball and who enjoy a little comedy and also a little insight into what's happening. Sometimes it's painful too, but he always ends his newsletter with a song. So thank you for that, Craig. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today. It was a lot of fun. I love chatting, guys.
Well, thanks again, brother. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here today, and we'll talk with you again real soon.
Just a reminder, you can find Craig Calcaterra at www.cupofcoffeenews.com. Also, Matt can be found on Blue Sky at matgermain.bsky.social. That's at mattgermain.bsky.social, or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. The Baseball Biz on Deck podcast is live on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at www.baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.